Okay. So we have 3 words we're going to focus on the definition of, and then we're going to talk a lot about notation. I've talked a little bit about notation before. Does anyone remember what notation is? It's how you write things. Especially in geometry, how you write things is incredibly important. The symbols that you use are very important to explain what you're doing. So, we're going to start off with the definition of an angle. Could anyone give me a definition of an angle? If you had to define it. Do you know what one is? Can you picture one in your head? It's kind of hard to put into words though, isn't it? I'm going to try to put it in words for you. You ready? An angle is the space created between 2 rays sharing a common endpoint. The space created between 2 rays sharing a common endpoint. So let's think about that for a minute. A ray has an endpoint and then it goes like this, right? And typically we have another point there and we call it like ray AB, correct? Now if I draw another ray that shares that same endpoint, I now have an angle, and the angle would be the area in there between those 2 rays. Now, since it's between those 2 rays, they cannot be collinear rays. They can't be the same line. There has to be a space between them for our purposes. So that's where your actual angle is. And do you know how we measure angles? Measured in what? Degrees. So that's your official definition of an angle. What about a vertex? What would the definition of the vertex be? It's kind of the end of something. With an angle specifically, it would be that common endpoint that they share. All right, so it's the common endpoint where the 2 rays meet. Okay, and then we have the sides of the angle. The sides are the individual rays composing the angle. So. Now, technically, when you're looking at an angle, for example, I have an angle right here. There's actually 2 angles there. There's this angle right here, which we would call the interior angle. But there's also this angle out here, which would be called the exterior angle. So there's actually 2. Now, we're going to focus on the interior ones, but we will get to situations in a little bit where we will look at interior and exterior together. Okay? So, first thing we're going to do is just name the angles. Name the vertex and the sides. Then we'll name the angles. So, in this particular one, I know I've already drawn on it, but what is the vertex? D. Okay. So the vertex we would say is D. D is a point, correct? Okay. The sides of the angle are what? They're rays, so they need the appropriate ray notation. What's one of the sides? Huh? It cannot be ED. Why can it not be ED? It cannot, it's not starting at E and going through D. It's starting at D and going through E. So we would have to call that one DE. And what's the other side then? DF. Both of those sides have to start with that vertex because that vertex is the end point. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. Try and name those for example 2. What's the vertex in number 2? B. And the sides, one of the rays would be what? BA, and the other one would be BC. Again, that vertex B has to be the first in both of those rays because it's the end point part of the ray, not the arrow part. Okay, so? All right, now let's get to naming an angle. Do you know how many ways you can name an angle? How many ways are there? How many different ways are there? There are 4 different ways to name an angle. The first way that you can name an angle is by its vertex. So in this particular example, what is its vertex? Q. Now when you write the angle, you would call it angle Q. There's a little bit of notation. That symbol right there means angle. And sometimes you might see that symbol like that. They'll put a little circle thing in it. Okay? We don't need to go there though. We'll just do that. That means angle Q. All right? The second way you can name it is by its number. Sometimes you will see a little number in there. Does that number have a degree sign with it? So it's not telling me that that's the degrees that make up that angle. It's telling me another name for that angle. So I could also call it angle 4. Now some angles I can't name by the number because they don't give them a number. The most common ways are the next 2, and these are the final 2 ways you can name them. By 3 letters or points. Now, when you label it with 3 letters, that's one of the most common ways you do it, but there's a order that is important to those letters. Okay? So another way I could label this is I could label it using P, Q, and R, and if I use those 3 letters, the vertex has to be in the middle. So it would be side, vertex, side. PQR, angle PQR. Now why did I say that's the last 2 ways? You could go the other way also and call it RQP. So angle RQP. What's critical there? That vertex is in the middle. Okay. So in example 4, see if you can name that 4 ways. So I have angle what? F, or angle 7, or angle GFH, or angle HFG. So? Okay, so that's how we name our angles. Now we're going to talk about drawing angles. So they've given me the vertex and the sides. I'm going to draw my angle. You ready? I start off by plotting my vertex, and I label it B. They tell me one of the sides is BA, so I'm going to draw a ray coming off there, and I'm going to put another point on that side and call it what? A. Right, so this would be ray BA. And then I'm going to go back to that vertex and draw the other ray, and what's the point I'm going to put on there? C. So there's an example of that drawn. Now, does it matter if I put the C up here and the A down here? No. Doesn't matter at all. Okay? So you draw example 6. So you should have something kind of like that. Yeah? Okay. Classifying angles, our last 4 words that we're going to talk about here. Acute angle, right angle, obtuse angle, and straight angle. Have you heard any of those words before? Yes. Awesome. Let's start with acute. What would you say is an acute angle? Is that one of the words you've heard? It is an angle that measures between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. So if I have an example right here, let's say that this is angle E and this is notated as 60 degrees, I can tell that's acute because 60 degrees is between 0 and 90. I could have another example here. We'll call it H, and if I label it like this, 85 degrees, that is still acute. Okay? You may see things like this. The official way of stating the degree measure of those angles, you would say M angle E. Lowercase m right there means the measure of angle E is equal to 60 degrees. Right here I would say the measure of angle H is equal to 85 degrees. So that little M in front of the angle sign means the measure of. What is a right angle? Measures are, I can't spell today, measures exactly 90 degrees. There's a couple different ways that could be shown. I could say something like this. I have an angle there and it's labeled 90 degrees. So clearly it's a right angle. I would say that the measure of angle A equals 90 degrees. There's another way that they can show us what a right angle looks like. Or not what it looks like, but that an angle is a right angle. So if I call this angle R, what's the symbol they can use? They put a little box right there. If they put that little box in the corner, that's the symbol that says it's a right angle. So I could also say the measure of angle R is 90 degrees. Now, out of curiosity, with this little M thing right here, this means the measure of How come I didn't do that up here when I was naming the angles? How come I didn't put that little M? I wasn't giving the measure of the angle. I was giving the name of the angle. Those are two different things. So try and keep those separate. All right, an obtuse angle. An angle that measures between 90 degrees and 180 degrees is called an obtuse angle. So, if I have an angle here, we'll call it angle K, and we'll say it's 135. 135 is definitely between 90 and 180. So I would say the measure of angle K, which is an obtuse angle, is 135 degrees. So. And then finally a straight angle. What's a straight angle? An angle that measures exactly 180 degrees. What does 180 degrees look like? So we know an angle has to have a vertex, right? So I'm going to call this vertex H. And the rays are such that they create a straight line right there. And this angle right here is considered a 180 degree angle. So the measure of angle H is 180 degrees. Okay. All right, last thing I want to show you, I want to draw an angle, and then I'm going to highlight a part of it, and I want you to name that part. Okay? So here's my first example. We're just going to be simple and call that A. So I want you to name that angle right there using its official name. What would you call that? You would call it angle A, right? That's its name. Does angle A appear to be acute, right, obtuse, or straight? Acute. It appears to be acute. Yes. Okay. What if I gave you this one? And I had A in there, and then I threw this in. Let's add a couple extra points. J, K, and L. And let's say I want you to name, actually I'm going to call this angle 1 and that angle 2, and I want you to name this angle right here. The highlighted pink one. Can you give it a name? Can I call it angle 1? No. Can I call it angle 2? No. Can I call it angle A? Angle A isn't going to be specific enough because there's angle 1 is also angle A. Angle 2 is also angle A. I need to be more specific to talk about what part of it I'm talking about. So I would want to call this one angle JAL or angle LAJ. So when you've got more than one angle in there, make sure you use the 3 points to name it. Okay? Otherwise, it's not specific enough about what part you're looking at. Okay? All right, last one here. All right, let's see if I can draw this. So, I have an angle here. I'm going to call that angle B. I'm going to add a point here, R, and a point here, we'll call it Y. And we're going to have two more rays in here. This one, I have a point K. This one, I have a point M. So I have 3 angles in there, don't I? Here's the one I want you to name. Name that bottom angle right there. Go ahead and name it as many ways as you can. What can I call that angle? Angle 3. That's one way I could name it. What else? Angle MBY. Angle YBM. Can I call it angle B? No, because technically there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 angles at angle B. So it's too broad to call it angle B. I have to be more specific than that. Okay? So? All right. That's our intro to angles. We'll be dealing more with those in the next couple days. So your homework is posted on Google Classroom. Happy studying.